Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the sixth of six of our presentations. I'm Ann Van Balen, and I am president of the Homeowners Association Board of Directors. And this is Bob Middlemiss, who is president of the Springs Country Club. Just a few comments before we get started. As most of you know, the three-year agreement the Springs Club has with the HOA expires October 31st of this year. So in preparation, anticipation of that, the two boards got together just about a year ago and talked about what we could do to either improve on that agreement or come up with something else. And during that process, we talked about how many things the HOA and the club has in common. For instance, from the very beginning, we shared the irrigation system. The master pump is on club property, the pump house is on club property, and there are lakes scattered throughout the Springs. I know two of them are on HOA common land, and the rest are all on club property. But they are the reservoir for our irrigation system. And we pay to maintain our two lakes, but JT does it. We're so interconnected. The fitness center is built on club property, and we pay the club $1 a year as a lease payment. The HOA office and the real estate office are both on club property. The HOA contracts and pays for the security, and the club reimburses us. The same goes for the roads. The HOA maintains the roads, and the club participates in the cost of that. So we are joined at the hip in so many ways, and one of the things the two boards decided to investigate were one, are there financial ways that we could consolidate to be more efficient? And the other was, what amenities could we add that may make us more relevant in today's environment? We're 40 years old, and we haven't kept up with the latest of everything. It quickly became apparent that we would be better off bringing in a professional to help us because we couldn't do it alone. So we were put in touch with the McMahon group, which is out of St. Louis, and they do a lot of this kind of work, working with clubs to help them revitalize themselves. So we did that, and we were told to put together a couple task forces, and we did. The HOA, I lead that one with Roger Beeman, Tom Hawken, Lillian Kuzmanik, and Kathy Kleban. And then Bob has Ed Gubman, Larry Morris, Gary Pollock, and John Rothschild. We've met quite often since last October. We've worked really hard looking at financials and other options to be considered. And we're here now with Frank Vane, who is going to tell our story through a PowerPoint presentation. And there will be questions. We ask you to hold your questions until the end, and just questions, please, no statements or speeches. Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming out. We're glad you were able to make one of the meetings. We've had wonderful attendance all week, a lot of participation, so that's been good. And really commend your task force has really worked hard. They've had a lot of open and broad discussions over the last number of months as they've looked into it, and really encourage, thankful for the board and serve the boards in terms of embracing what we see as an important part of the process, which is to be open and transparent and communicative. Ultimately, the decisions have to be made here by the homeowners, by the club members, and those sorts of things. So I think people are better equipped to do that when we keep them informed. So that's what you'll really see in our process. We're kind of right in the middle of the screen here, as we say we are here. As the group's been meeting over a number of months, they've spent time, which will be part of our briefing today, kind of reviewing current conditions, what's happening inside the gates, what's happening outside the gates that we ought to be aware of. And so we've talked about a lot of that stuff. As we did then, we've started to develop a sense of strategy. Where would we see the organization going in the future? And what are some of the models, some of the choices that would support that, or some of the things that we could look at and say, well, maybe those don't support what we're trying to accomplish. So our purpose at this point in the process is begin to bring all that information back to you. So you see the kind of things that the task force has been talking about, hopefully learn some things about what's happening in the, inside the gates and outside in the community here. An important part of that is everything that you see in the presentation today is going to be sent to you. And in fact, the presentation itself, the information is, as you can see, being videotaped, so that'll be sent out to everyone. There'll also be kind of a briefing paper with that that describes and shows all the numbers. There's a lot of information in this presentation, so first time through, you're just getting a sense of it. But we'll put all that in writing and send that out to everyone, and that'll be accompanied by a survey questionnaire that's specifically customized to test your feedback and your opinion and get your thoughts about kind of where we are and where you would see it going in the future. So that's extremely important, to stay engaged, to answer your survey. Make sure that your friends and members and all that maybe aren't here, that we want to see a big response. And I think we will. I know when you consider the operational agreement that Ann talks about, 80% of homeowners voted in that process, 70% approved it. So we expect to see a lot of support, or a lot of participation, of course, as part of that. But all that gives us the ability, gives us the wisdom of the community, what you like and what you don't like, what you want to see happen in the future, what you'll support, so that ultimately a recommended approach can be that kind of a success story like you had last time. 70% sort of agreeing as to what you'd like to do. So this will take some months. Clearly it would be ideal if before the current agreement expired at the end of October that we had a voting recommendation for you. We'll see. Obviously that agreement could be extended, should it be necessary, to kind of carry that forward while additional decision making is being made. But our hope is that we get through this process, getting the survey back and getting that information, say early into June, giving us really the summer to think about that, and as we get back into the end of the 2018 year, to have something to come out for your consideration. And that's why we need to get you involved and informed. The boards can't do this alone. It'll require votes by the community, and probably by the club also as part of that. So we think better people are more likely to either support that or come up with the right answer when we have a lot of engagement, a lot of participation. As we look at some of the things we want to go through is to talk about the case for change. What is happening out there? What's the environment for clubs and communities, kind of things that we see going on. Things we considered but aren't in the recommendation category. And then, of course, some ideas about what we see as primary options for developing a stronger community and a stronger club here in the future. And then we'll recap again, thinking about next steps as to where we go from here. So as we look at the case for change, why do anything? Now, we have one compelling reason, is the fact that you structured a landmark agreement, and a new agreement here now, just about 2.5 years ago. Ann mentions that runs till the end of October. So we've got to decide about what to do with that agreement. But it's a little bigger than that as we think about it, and really a number of those things are things that you considered in formulating that working relationship. We're in the Coachella Valley, where there's clearly an oversupply of golf courses, so that's having an effect on most of the clubs that are here. Golf participation itself nationwide is down a bit. There are about 20% fewer golfers today than there were 10 and 20 years ago. Unfortunately, the bigger decline has happened among people under age 50. So we don't see sort of a cavalry coming over the hill that all of a sudden there's a lot of golfers out there. Clear evidence to society, a lot of the 40 and 50-year-olds who eventually will move to places like this are not as golf-centric as their predecessors once were. For that reason and others, there's been a precipitous decline in membership, and as a result, value of membership over that over the last 20 years here at the club. And as I mentioned, people will still come, and they're going to continue to come to the Valley here. But we think the prospects and even the members today, which was evident in the surveys that the members here completed last year, the expectations are changing, and what we're interested in and want to participate in is somewhat different than the past. Now, the golfing membership overall is really shouldering a heavy load in this scenario, and really for them to continue to try and provide a full-service country club, even with the augmentation of revenues by the resident social members, difficult to do, expensive to do, and again, that's impacting our value. And with all those opportunities in the community, there's a price war outside the gates, right? There's a lot of discounting and cutting of fees and selling memberships on a very price-based sort of strategy. Now here, as I say, when you get the material, you'll have a closer look at the data here, but graphically, all you have to see, these bars here represent the number of regular golf members at the Springs Country Club going back to 407 and 390 back in the 96, 97, 98 time period. And you can see that steady decline. We get to sort of around 9/11, and economy gets a bit softer and other things happen. In fact, the highest rounds of golf ever played in the United States and the largest number of golfers in the United States peaked in 2003, some 15 years ago now. We started to feel a little bit of that. And then we sort of bump along at that level, and then we get into 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, and kind of the bottom falls out overall for the club, bottoming out at around 225 regular golf memberships versus the 407. Now we've come a little bit off the bottom here, as you can see, but really the economy has been in pretty good recovery over the last 4 or 5 years. Housing sales have picked up here, housing values have picked up, but the club has not picked up, at least as far as regular golf memberships. Be a variety of reasons at play, but we think the value proposition is the big one, right? So at this point in time, when we're doing very well here as a club, dues were $440 a month. Well, if you take $440 and adjust that for inflation to 2017, that's $686 per month, right? So dues really should be about $700 a month today. And when you take the dues and the capital fee, we're pushing $1,400, right? So that really has discouraged a lot of people from jumping in the golf. There were many people in the survey that was taken at the Springs in 2017 who said they're playing golf, but they're going other places to play that golf and not playing here. Obviously, at these numbers, if you're a very passionate and hardcore and active golfer, maybe you can get value out of that. There's no dabbling in that. There's no people thinking, I might play golf or I might be satisfied playing 20 or 30 rounds. You really need to be all in at those kinds of numbers. We clearly don't have enough people who are all in that scenario. So we've essentially cut the membership in half and doubled the price over that period of time. That's had a major impact. And even with the augmentation of the revenue from the resident social member program, it's certainly better. And we recognize that action was both financially beneficial to the club, and it was beneficial to the community and building a sense of community. More people are using the oasis. People are dining at the club. There's a sense that there's more engagement among the residents and the community over that period of time. But financially, it results in about $460,000 net benefit to the club. It starts at top line. We have 817 homes in the community paying $125 a piece. That's $1.25 million, right? So that's good. We a little bit floats away given foreclosures and that sort of thing. The HOA actually pays to the club what it collects in this scenario. But two other sort of major changes from that bring the $1.2 million down are, one, the golf members, 168 golf members who live in the community, don't pay the $125 because they're already paying the dues that we just saw on the page and supporting all the activities. So it's not really 817, it's 817 minus the 168 that we get the $125 from. Then on the other side is, as you made those changes, people took action. There were certainly social membership. I think there were 145 or something at one point in time, paying about $350 per month. There's no reason to continue to do that, right? So that changed. And there were even some golf members who said, boy, the resident social membership includes 10 full rounds of golf, 29-hole rounds. I can get enough golf that way, and you even had some downgrades there. So that, you know, sort of siphons off another $500,000 or so. So again, no doubt about it, $460,000 coming into the club at the end of that has been very helpful. Your club, I don't know what it would be doing today without that, frankly. It'd be a whole different scenario. But, you know, if we had an impression, boy, we're giving them $1.2 million, and why isn't everything, you know, perfect? It's primarily because of these reasons. And, you know, that's a help, but it's not the step change. And we don't see it as something that's going to, you know, for the long period of time, kind of resolve our overall issues. Now, part of that is market conditions, as we say. You look at here, this is a map of the valley with Rancho Mirage right in the center. These are 5, 10, and 15-mile ring circles around there. Names of a lot of clubs. I think there are about 60 private clubs spread across the valley, 118, 119 golf courses. As you look at that, but the big takeaway from this is looking at the red, which really what that says is those folks have a travel time of 5 minutes or less to a club. Right, so unlike a lot of communities where geographically we might have strength, we might have a marketplace because where we're located, everybody in the valley here can go out their door and drive 5 minutes in any direction and find a club to join, right? So as we look at that, there's really, you know, there's too many courses and clubs, and that's really developing that price war. No real specific, sustainable competitive advantage in that way. There are some stratifications, obviously, as you do that, but you know, it's really an oversupply and a lot of choice among the consumer, and it's being verified even today. We're in a lot of sort of resort second home communities. If you go to Scottsdale and Florida and Carolinas, they're raising fees and growing and all that. That's actually, we saw some of the biggest sort of name brand clubs in the valley here cut their entrance fee within just the last year, just going into the 17-18 season. And a lot of memberships are being sold on a discounted basis. The club here had success last year attracting about, I think it's 25, 26 new golf members coming into the club, but that's at a teaser rate of about $650 coming in at an entrance at a dues level, not the kind of numbers that we saw a moment ago, 1,000 or more. They'll progress to that over time if we're fortunate enough to keep them. Whether we do or not, that certainly is a question and a concern as we do that. And really overall, you know, selling memberships on a real price-driven strategy is not what clubs are all about, right? We want it to be about value. We want it to be about quality and people who really aspire to belong here and be part of the association. So, you know, certainly all the communities in the area here are looking at ways to align the residents and the club members. Some are at war between residents and club members, and clearly your agreement took you out of that position, was successfully executed, and has had some positive effects. And all of this is about keeping it at that level, because the ones that are fighting, obviously, this is not an environment where you want to be fighting. You know, you really want to have unity and success that will go with that. When we look also at the valley, it will continue to grow. Population is expected to grow by about 5% a year in the coming years, but it used to be 10. So there's going to be more people, but not quite the growth rate that we once experienced. So when we look at the changes that are taking place in the valley there, and you look at the effect that, you know, when you look internally at the community, what's the case for change there? Well, again, you've had this discussion in formulating the agreement. We benefit from the green space of a golf course in our community and a club in our community, whether we play golf or not. Right? There's a physical aspect to that, a density issue, a beauty issue, all of those things that go with that. And frankly, the success clubs have a direct correlation to the home values in their community. A lot of experts would associate that about 20 to 40% home values get a lift by the quality of the club that exists within that gated community. So the attractiveness of the club is very important to protecting home values. So as an HOA, generally, broadly as an HOA, and then individually as a homeowner, you have interest in the club's success, right? All the shared interest that Ann talked about initially. So a big weakness that's, you know, evolved in all this when the market has gotten stressful is that the independent HOA and club structure is a challenge and a threat. a threat if we're homeowners because the HOA has no control over the club, yet it could have a negative effect on our home values, right? And on the other side, when we see all that sea of clubs and supply out in the marketplace, if the club is not getting maximum support from those within the gates, it really is back into the price war. And we're discounting and selling memberships on that sort of strategy, right? So not an attractive place to be in. So this really is an issue that was important to us as we had the discussions, and really said for the sustainability and the success of both entities, really having them work together and partner is a necessary piece of this. Now, when the clubs also, you're here to have fun, I think, right? We're here to be in community. We move into these places so that we have the safety of the security gates and the walls and all of those sorts of things. But I think you're here because you like other people and you want to meet your neighbors and all be part of that and have a lot of fun, right? And so, again, that's why we build clubs within communities, is to amenitize that lifestyle, to activate that lifestyle and have people have fun and meet their neighbors and enjoy that. Now, we believe in order to be successful in the future, we have to update aspects of what's going on at the Springs today, because that's what the consumer is asking for, right? And so the older model country club is looking at ways to modernize, reinvent, redeploy new amenities, upgrade their amenities so that they're very attractive to the next generation of members that are here. And frankly, with all this, those communities that figure that out have a better story to tell. The new buyers, the new members, the new homeowners are coming in and asking a lot of questions. What is your organizational structure? What's the financial standing of the club? All those sorts of things. They're smart buyers. They've seen communities go away. They've seen clubs go broke, all those kinds of things. So they want to know. And when your story is, we have an answer, we have a structure, we can do this, that certainly is a much more effective story than something like over at Rancho Mirage Country Club. Where you see there, and some call it this Mark Dodge, who runs some 160 associations throughout California here and the Southwest. Rancho Mirage Country Club is the tip of the iceberg. Right? Well, what happened over there is, essentially the club no longer working, sold to a developer, and had a vision. That developer had a vision of, we're going to have some hotel development in there, change of purpose. We need to monetize. We just bought this asset. We need to get some return on that investment as we do that, and the homeowners fought that. So his decision was to shut off the water on the golf course and said, okay, let's now talk about that. So they talked about that for 2 years, and essentially his agenda ultimately was approved by the homeowners. And there's going to be now a hotel development in there, and eventually an 80-acre partial golf course, right, as part of that. So, and there's a number of folks, we can go right around the corner here, there's a number of battles going on here that we don't want to be any part of. This is not what the Springs has historically been about, and not what the Springs needs to be about in the future. But it is important to recognize, an owner makes decisions about what happens in the property. And so a big question for the community is what do you want to own, and who do you want to have own those assets? We see in Rancho Mirage as that takes place, we see home values, the Rancho Mirage values, the dollars per square foot, which used to be well above the Springs and pushing $200 a square foot, dropped to $148 a square foot during the controversy there, and they've come only slightly off the bottom, where your home values have been going up steadily over that period of time. So people notice, right? And so houses go down by $70,000, $16 million worth of real estate value evaporates in the community as a result of that. And if you extrapolate those numbers across 817 homes here, this is not a place that we want to go, where we have $500,000 median values, well over $400 million worth of real estate, and we start to take 15 and 20% hits on value. That's not what we need. That's small potatoes compared to really making effective decisions and really having a plan for the future as to what we can do here at the community. Now in clubs, there's a bit of a difference, right? As you say, the buyers are looking for the whole package. And so we're advising almost all of our clients today to look past caps and numbers and those sorts of things that they had in the past, to say it's about scale, right? If you can't talk to the new buyer about Yes, we have safety and security, and we have a nice golf course, but we really have some fun variety dining outlets. We have neat places that bring people together. And really, more importantly, we have a bunch of additional recreation in addition to golf. We're not going to connect with those people, and they'll go join somewhere else and be somewhere else. In fact, at McMahon Group, what our research has shown us is where golf was the driving component in these communities over the last 10 or 20 years, health, fitness, and wellness will be the driver of these communities going forward. And so, again, I was part of the fitness development here in 2002, and certainly that's provided great value to the community and be a nice thing to provide. It's also now sort of a 10 or 15-year-old facility. Fitness is evolving beyond just equipment in a room to wellness and rehab and all those kinds of things, spa facilities, all that's going to be part of it, as well as a good array of games, right, that are all part of that. And so while the golfers supply a golf course, we supply places for people to play cards in the clubhouse and tennis on the tennis courts and all those kinds of things that are part of it. So we've got a lot of those things, but we have to ultimately answer that question very strongly and emphatically. There's a lot to do here when you're, if you're either not a golfer at all or in addition to when you are playing golf. That certainly is a strategy that the Lakes has developed. They were formulated with a joint called Bundled Community. The club, the HOA owned the club from day one. We worked with them on strategy development over about 4 or 5 years ago, and they've really developed a model that says, discover why our members describe the Lakes as an adult Disneyland, right? A place where it's fun and there's a lot of enjoyment, and they've really embraced investment in their facility as part of that. Modernized their food and beverage program. They've created a lot of programs, clubs within a club for engagement there, a lot of holiday events, a lot of parties, and all of those sorts of things. Truly an integration of the club concept and the community concept, and it's a fun, lively place, and a lot of good things going on as a result of that. Toscana is another example, different type of club altogether than the Lakes, and a different price point and those sorts of things. But again, when you look at what are they communicating to the world, yeah, there's a square dedicated to golf. It's also dedicated to their homes and their events and their spa and their sports club and all of those sorts of things. And that's your competition, right? Those are people, that's what the buyers are going to see as they choose the place to live in the future. And I just love this quote, just because this is a CEO, Bill Bowen of the Sunrise Company. I mean, they're in it as a business, right? And at some level, you put your business hat on. And he says, we are in an industry, the club industry, right, that has seen monumental shifts over the past decade as country club members are looking for a casual, family-friendly, fun, and wellness-driven experience in addition to golf. Right? So that's really the strong message that we see out there, and the opportunity, frankly. You've got a lot of these basic amenities here, and all that as part of a strategy is to bring all that together. How do we deploy that, build community, have you have enjoyment here, and certainly have it attractive so that when the next prospect is looking at it, they're really excited about coming into the Springs. And in fact, that's really been verified by what was the answers that were from the survey here at the club last year. In fact, golf came in 5th on the list, and I think a lot of club members answered that survey, a lot of resident social members answered that survey, but it is about the oasis in casual dining, health and fitness, next on the list. So, good social spaces behind that, then golf, and then parties, all of that. So that priority order exists within the Springs today. But in follow-up questions, when we say, well, how are we doing at that? How are we positioned to do that? Survey clearly said, well, the clubhouse decor is pretty dated, kind of stuffy, looks like an older country club model to me. In the golf area, about 25% of the respondents indicated they play golf, but they choose not to play golf at the Springs because of the price point. 30% don't play golf at all. We're always going to have a number like that, certainly. And then in kind of the payoff question from the survey, it got into membership and those sorts of things, and really, again, asked the community, how do you see us growing membership in the future? And the big takeaways were, well, you ought to modernize the social areas at that club. You ought to build some outdoor dining, some casual spaces and gathering areas, and really we require facilities and programs to work together and to have a more relevant lifestyle that all comes out of that. So that was a club internal developed survey last year, executed, and a lot of good feedback that fits towards this. So saying, going through all that, just give you a recap of the group looking, kind of internally, where are we, externally, what's happening there, and what is kind of, a vision discussion, which we call Vision 2020. Put yourself in this chair here and say, if we come back in this room in 2020, how would you like to be describing the Springs? That was our exercise. That's what we looked at, and the various categories of that. And so we ultimately, with the task force development statement says, Springs is, continual aspiration, is one of Coachella Valley's most vibrant lifestyle communities, enriching lives and promoting the health and well-being of our residents by providing a safe and secure gated environment and access to a wide range of social activities, dining options, games, and recreation. So we want to get in line with those trends. We want to respond to the competition that's in the marketplace. We want to make this a fun and enjoyable place to live and maintain a lot of the good value and everything that we have here today. We think we can do that by having the community and the club be socially and economically aligned. It's a big piece of that. Obviously have an active lifestyle community. Be a place where it's fun and friendly. You're noted for that, and certainly that extensive social and athletic programs forge those connections. The club really is a conduit for relation building here. We want to have multiple recreational opportunities in addition to golf. But we want to be very good at golf, right? So if you're a golfer here, this is about keeping a quality golf experience. The course here is so well maintained and those sorts of things. What we believe, and I think what ultimately the committee came to, and I would tell you that task force, it was, as we started out, you never know in those meetings, people have different visions and all that. But they did agree around a central point. It looks like we're going to have to do something bold if we really want to respond to the dynamics that are out there and the positions that we find ourselves in today. We think we have a lot of features that you build on in that model. Strengths, it of course is safe and secure. It's been very stable. A lot of new homes, a lot of homes sold in the last year or two. A lot of investment going into those properties. Size is one of your key allies. There's a lot, with 817 homeowners, you have strength in numbers. That's really a positive, great location in the valley. A lot of value. HOA fees today are attractive. I tell you the fees could be attractive going forward. And overall, I thought one of the real takeaways that we saw in the situation was the fact that the club has no debt. So a lot of times when clubs are under stress, like this one has been over the last decade or so, they leverage themselves. They borrow a lot of money, and not only then do they not have enough members and they have a high cost, they're also facing some big bank, $4 or $5 million worth of debt. That is not the case here. So that was really an important part of the decision making here, and opened up a lot of opportunities for you. On the other side, we think that that separate ownership and control of the HOA and club is a weakness. With sort of fragmented management and operations that way, it's the different the fitness centers under control one group, the club under another, those sorts of things. You really like all that service profile to be brought together. There's some duplication in administration as a result. The HOA and the club both have receivables and payables. There's maintenance staff. There's ways that we could work together. Again, if we had a longer runway and had real clarity around that as part of it. So things that we looked at then, we said, well, okay, and again, I remind you, the lens we're looking at is what we listed as that aspiration, and that's what we're saying. Well, okay, where do we take this thing? And we talked about a number of things that were all sort of part of your menu and your discussion a few years ago, right? Should we even be together as the HOA and the club, right? Let the club, let the operating agreement expire, let the club go back to being the club, and we'll be the HOA. Or on the other side, the golf club could say, well, we're tired of offering tennis courts, we're just going to be a golf club. We'll be the plantation at the Springs. And we'll play golf and we'll eat hot dogs, and that's all we need to do, and downscale all the rest of it. Or you could turn the club over to a third party, maybe an operator, maybe a club corp could come in here, or somebody could come in and they'd operate the club. And so, see, these obviously, we believe, don't line up with that vision that we talked about a moment ago. We talked a little bit more about them, and we'll show you some of the results of that. On the other side, we said, well, there's some partnership arrangements. Let's just continue this agreement that we have, right? And certainly, that may be that's part of an answer here. But again, the short-term duration of that means not a lot of planning can be done around that. Not a lot of our action taken can be done with that. Or we could sort of push this off a little bit and let's have a mandatory membership program. Every time a home sells, we'll have a new member come in. They'll become a member of the club because they have to. They'll pay a transfer fee, and over time, we'll grow, membership and revenue that way. So these all fit into the category of interesting. They've been in the discussion here for a number of years. You've reviewed them previously. I'd say most of them, except for the mandatory membership program, certainly on this side of it, really are just, again, either more tax programs to generate revenue out of residents for a club that they don't own, or to take things against the trends, right? To be golf only today in a full service world is certainly a dangerous position to try and maintain, and that's what these slides really say here. Suppose we let the agreement expire and we just say, well, let's go back to everybody being on their own. Well, homeowners would save $125 a month if we did that, but we think we lose a lot on the other side. First of all, about 20% of the residents have bought since November of 15 when the original agreement was formulated. So that's all they've ever known. They moved into the Springs and they go, oh, I get access to tennis, I get access to this or that. So be a significant disappointment and maybe even battle with them. So we saw we net out about $450,000 in revenue. If the club loses that, boy, they've got a world of hurt to deal with there, and that threatens the club and threatens homes as a result of that. Might force to rethink some of these things, as Ann's talking about, the land and sharing and those sorts of things. And the club would really be forced to investigate a lot of what we think are kind of distasteful options, including sales or closing down non-golf amenities. The golf-only model, I think really this is answered by what we just talked about in terms of trends. Golf is here to stay. Golf's not going away. We have no expectation of that. But as I say, selling golf only today, boy, that'd be a tough place to be in. And if we chose that model, again, we drop $125 in cost, and we could lower the cost to play golf here. There's no doubt that shuttering a lot of this stuff over here would make golf cheaper. It'd be all you'd have. But on the other side, you've always been a full-service country club to a degree, and we don't want to go that way. And say from a market perspective, the buyer is looking for those sorts of things. What would we do with those other areas that aren't the golf course? You wouldn't want to just have them sit there. You're trying to redevelop them or do something with them, which would be, again, perhaps not very attractive in the community. Selling the club, if there were a buyer, I think what's been interesting to me in the Valley is sales that have taken place have not been to the club companies, right? Club Corp is not expanding its footprint beyond the Mission Hills property, for example, right? So the sales here and the sales at Rancho Mirage have been to developers, right, who come in, and they're developers, right? They take properties and turn them around and make changes to them. So it's unlikely that there's a golf company that comes in and says, let's continue to run it as a golf club. If they did, they might put some money into it. They might have a lower cost structure because they're a multi-club operator. But on the other side, it would just further expose the homeowners to risk from an asset that they don't control. And so if they decide, maybe Club Corp does buy it, and if Mission Hills is sold out today, we'll have you come play golf at the Springs, and now we've got people coming through the gates and violates our first premise of safety and security, right? So really don't want to go into that regard. And I know there's always some doubt that says, well, geez, let them buy it. They can't turn it into this or turn it into that. Well, the Rancho Mirage is a good example, and even where I live right now, there's a piece of property in our area where somebody just purchased, and they're before the city, changing the deed restrictions and those kinds of things. So, there's a fight that happens with that because they're driven by looking at getting some revenue out of that property. Extending the agreement, as I said, and it may be that this is complex to figure out, and it might get extended, once or so as we move to the future, but it is not a continual one-year extensions of the agreement are not a long-term answer for the clubs. If some point the boards decide to go a different direction or that sort of thing, then all of a sudden that's broken. But more so, you really can't take the actions to get the organizations to work more closely together because you're always at risk that, boy, next year if it's a different ball game, I need staff, or I need to, readjust and put something together that I've already dismantled. So, as I say, it's near-term protection. The boards can do it. It can be extended for a year each year. It can raise the dues by 3%. So it has some shelter, and it's an important part of the whole decision process. But while we were wise to get a 3-year agreement in place and to give you the foundation that we can have this kind of conversation today, it's not the agreement or 1-year agreements that will carry us forward. And finally, we talked about the notion of mandatory membership. The idea, you see these here where new buyers come in, they have to become a club member, they pay an entrance fee. The Lakes, they pay $8,500 to be a social member, $10,000 to be a golf member. As they do that, we could set those fees at whatever we wanted to do in that regard, create some capital, could even grandfather the folks who are here today saying keep doing what you're doing. But you end up still with 2 associations as part of that. And it was really kind of the incremental nature of this that concerned us. It doesn't generate a lot of capital initially. Over time, it is a source of capital and somewhat of membership growth, but it only happens on a step-by-step basis. If we sell 40 or 50 homes a year, it's happening at that rate, and it'll take a while. It'll be really a full generation downstream before true full change is in effect. So I think with all that lands on, well, what will support our vision, right? What did we land on as a conversation saying, we think that here's an approach, here's an idea, and we're going to be testing this, we're going to ask you for your thoughts and all of those sorts of things in this program. And they're strong partnerships. What we put at the top of the list is that what we call the recapitalization plan. The HOA recapitalizes the club, which means we form one entity. We merge the club and the HOA into one entity. As part of that, we develop a complete lifestyle community. It's not just about a structural merger and administrative merger. We also have to change, and we have to generate some capital where we can make that change happen. That means investing in facilities and making improvements. Now there's an operating model, what I call operating model 2.0. We could take the existing 3-year agreement, make some adjustments based upon what we've learned over the last few years, and move in that direction. And that helps. That actually could achieve a lot of the financial issues that are addressed in this plan. But what it doesn't address is the control issue, right? So this is really about control. This is about really structure, and that all homeowners become full equity members of the club, joint ownership of all the assets. There's a single board and management team, there's committee structures all in one organization chart. The new board is elected, and the operation is under Davis Sterling from a reserve perspective. There are 2 memberships. Everyone would have to be a social member. If you want to elect to be a golf member, that option is available. Expenses will be divided accordingly, meaning we really drill down on what's it cost to deliver a golf year, what's everything else cost, divide those costs logically among the membership plan. Now this is important. There's a capital assessment as part of this, right? Capital assessment at the front end to generate capital that we can put towards improvements, to make some changes around here. We believe make the facilities more attractive, more useful to you, more attractive to new buyers. And also as part of that is that in order for the golf members to be willing to transfer these assets to the HOA, they have to see an uplift in the experience, they have to see an investment, they have to see commitment that it's going to be run well and it's going to be improved to be sustainable and provide all the things that we think it needs to be. And then on the final piece of that, you can put that membership program in place, right? We could have that mandatory membership program. New members coming in, any new home buyer would have to become a member of the club, as a social member as the floor, and again, they could elect to become a golfer, right? So that's really the overall mechanism or strategy behind that. Clearly, the things that we've talked about here, we think it protects real estate values because we have it figured out. The house is for sale, new buyers are coming in, real estate, the seller can say, this is a community that's working together and has a full-on strategy. There's one board. There's safety and security. We don't have outside golf play or the commercial sort of golf play that would be part of that. Costs would be shared accordingly. And as I say, it really puts you in a place to have a competitive advantage over those who are battling and don't have an answer for who controls what and how's this organization going to succeed long term. So the concept, HOA assumes control of the club and assets, dividing then the operating costs to the golf community and to the social, recreational aspects on those two lines. And we raise capital to invest in facilities and make significant improvements. So under this scenario, the golf membership then carries the cost of maintaining the course, and they carry a share of general overhead expenses. Clearly, for example, the accounting staff spends time figuring out how to bill a golfer for whatever they're doing. There's taxes and those sorts of things. Those would be divided out. On the other side, the HOA would be responsible for all direct expenses regarding the social activities, the balance of the overhead that's not directly related to just the golf, and then as the owning entity, then the repairs and maintenance for the facilities. So we'll talk about the dollars and cents of each of those. We're just assuming off of numbers that we have today, there are 224 golfers. We assume that number going forward. And then on the total of the HOA and actually non-resident members of the club really brings that up to 882. So those are the two groups that we've used. And the formula for membership, as I said, everyone needs to be a social member. You can opt into being a golf member as part of that plan. And the assumption at this point in time is that the golf privileges for social members remain very similar to what's in the resident social member plan today. Right? So pretty similar experience from an HOA perspective. The math on that is it's about $3.8 million in operating expenses then that need to be allocated. So the direct cost of golf nets down to about $1,592,000, and we'll explain more of these in a minute. Other expenses then at just about $2.2 million. We talk about allocating the overhead expenses. So having gone through and looked at how much of our facilities are dedicated to what activities, how much time is spent on an administrative basis providing these services, what the insurance costs are, what the property taxes are. The golf share of overhead expenses would be $383,000 a year. So the cost of golf plus the share of overhead expenses gives us just short of $2 million as a number to fund for golf. That allows us to provide just a golf experience, right? We then take the 2.1 here, 2.2, subtract out the overhead that's being carried there, and we look at sharing $1.8 million for the rest, for the social experience of everything that's here. So we look, this was, we went through with staff here and everything and looked at, the financials, the clubhouse operations, the general and administrative expenses, insurance, property tax, the gross amount for each of those. And they really divide out when you think about it. And actually, the exercise was done without a goal in mind, just sort of said, well, and what's this look like? Turns out about a quarter of that energy and cost goes to golf, and about 3/4 of that goes to providing the rest of the experience here. So that was the allocation model used. And when we pump that back through golf, we have a few things. One, golf has revenue, right? There are carts and guest fees and pro shop sales and things like that, revenue of just about $800,000. When you take the expense to create that revenue plus the course itself, it's just about $2.4 million. So we take the revenue, we take the total expenses, you net that down to $1,592,000, absorb that share of allocated expenses, and I said earlier we're looking at funding just about $2 million from the golf community. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because on this side then we can modify golf dues. We said earlier they're too high for the marketplace now. We've got to try and get those into a realistic level. And if we just said that we need to fund $1,975,000 by 224 members, that's $735 per month as average dues. And frankly, the philosophy of this plan is whatever that is, it's divided by whatever this is, the number of golf members. So if we just picked up another 16 golf members, because all of a sudden we've taken a few $100s a month out of cost, we can actually take another $50 out of the cost, right? And so it would have that elasticity. Now, we're going to talk in a minute about social dues. They have to pay social dues in addition to this, but this is what you're getting as the cost of golf. And this starts to get us into, remember the sort of the second slide in this program or so about the inflation-adjusted dues, it starts to get us to that number. Right? We think that's a real constructive move. As I say, then we take the other side of the operation and all the social and everything that goes with that, the net cost of food and beverage, tennis and everything that's provided over there, the remaining share of the unallocated expenses, and a subsidy for events and that sort of thing. We're looking at $1.8 million. We talked about the 817 plus the outside the gates members. That's an average cost of $171 a month. So essentially the 125 goes to 171 in that scenario. And now we're funding all the social piece of this. But there's one more step. We think that that's today we're at $125 for social dues. Frankly, those are very, very low compared to the marketplace. There's a couple 200s out there, but more commonly, that's like your number used to be $350. That's often a $350, $400 number in the community. So what we're proposing is we round those 171 social costs up to $200 as a social dues. And so living in the Springs, you would pay $825 for the homeowners association, $200 for social dues, or $1,025 a month, $75 a month over what you're paying today. We think that's market sustainable. We also take the remainder of that money, that other $29, and we put it towards capital. The club just completed a reserve study that projected out over the course of 10 years all kinds of wear and tear and physical equipment and those sorts of things, from golf course to kitchens and all of those sorts of things there. And it identified that on an annual basis, the club ought to be spending about $900,000 a year to keep those facilities in good repair. Now, over the last decade, that number's been, what, 350-ish, maybe, something like that. So we've been undercapitalized, obviously, during that period of time. Now, our experience with capital, reserve studies is they're interesting, a necessary financial planning tool. They're also, they're very kind of accounting oriented, and we think that typically 50 to 60% of that actually comes true. Just because a manual says a compressor is going to wear out in 15 years doesn't mean it does. Even in an irrigation system, they last 20 years. Doesn't mean on the 20 years of one day the thing breaks down. So normally you get more out of your capital than what a schedule may show. I think 50 to 60% is about the norm. We set a little higher bar here and said we want to fund 3/4 of that, 70% of that at least. And say if we had that kind of capital stream, double the capital stream we have today, we think we can really keep this place in good shape and in good repair and identify a long-term plan that's supportive of that. So sorry about that, this thing jumps around a little bit. So how do we get that capital? As we said, we need $171 a month in operating dues for social. If we make that a market competitive $200, we have $306,000 a year left over for CapEx. So that money would go to capital. Then we have this membership fee on new homeowners. And so as I say, every new homeowner needs to become a social member. Set a price for that at $7,500. So that's, if we assume 50 homes turnover a year, that's $375,000. And if we assume out of that group, because we have a new market competitive golf structure, 10 of those people decide to become golfers at an additional fee of $2,500, we have another $25,000. And so between our regularly recurring capital fee, entrance fees, if you will, from new home buyers coming in, we have just over $700,000 coming in. We hit that 75% threshold that we were looking at. That even includes an irrigation system for the golf course. Obviously, reserve studies get kind of lumpy when you have big numbers in there for that, and so that's in the schedule for around 2020 or 21. Our complete expectation that there's probably some augmentation to that from the golfers when it comes time to do that, and that accounts for a little bit of the difference in the capital plan. Also, as we talk about an initial injection of capital, you're going to pull forward some of the things that are in the reserve study. If you renovated this space into whatever, a new bar or something, you'd put in new carpet, you'd put in new chairs, things that are in the reserve study, right? So capital projects always have a way of doing a bit of that also. So that gets our normal CapEx funded. The final piece of the puzzle, right, is we need some capital. We need some capital to recognize the transfer of assets from the club members to the community. And we need that capital in order to make improvements. We'll decide what those improvements are, but something to inject some new life in it and take the most important parts of our facilities and modernize them. So we're suggesting a $5,000 initial capital assessment. We're saying here probably payable over 2 or 3 years. Accommodations may be made in the case of extreme cases, extreme need. We have somebody aging in place, their house is for sale, and there's some, certainly some considerations that will be made there. And that would generate about $4.1 million on the front end of the program. Now that $4 million doesn't go to anybody, it goes to all of you. It's your money, it goes back into the club, it goes back into making improvements. So if we want better dining, we want better fitness, whatever it is, we'll have to be selective. $4 million clearly doesn't do all of a facility today, as what kind of costs are there, but you as a homeowner determine what that is. Our survey that we're going to be running is going to be asking you, if you like this idea, where would you direct the money? Kind of see what our priority schedule with that may be. Do we want a better oasis? Do we want a better 19th hole and outdoor dining, new fitness exercise areas? Those kinds of things are all things that we could consider in that scenario. So when you pull all that together in one sheet, what's happened? We get an HOA where your monthly cost is increased by $75. Your $825 remains your $825. $125, which is accommodate, and then the goes to $200, and that's a combination of the dues and capital for the social member plan, making it $1,025 for HOA, inclusive of your club social membership. On the golf side now, since we're directing all the golf expense to them, and it brings their cost down. So when they pay their HOA, they all have to pay social dues, whether you're inside the gates or out, everybody's paying social. Golf dues, we're able to move down to $735 a month, $310 lower than they are today. And since they've shed the capital, they don't own the course any longer, they don't have to pay that capital fee. They're paying capital within their social dues, but not that extraordinary fee that they're paying today. So all in, the cost of golf goes down by $260 a month. We think that'll move the needle for some people. I think that's certainly better. That's well over $3,000. So golf today, living in here and being a golf member, costing you $2,020 a month. That number goes to $1,760. We think that'll be attractive, and we think that'll generate some golf participation as a result of that. So this box just says, we've got revenue here of around $6 million. We have our expenses. We've spread out the unallocated expenses, and we've generated a stream of $700,000 a year going in the capital. So we've got a well-maintained facility, and our operations covered all through the program. We think there are a lot of advantages of that. I'd say, number one is the combination of one entity, right? One entity which you control as a homeowner. We think that takes away a big threat to home values. You can vote, you can hold office, you make those decisions. The 817 drive this thing as they want to. One board elected by you. It leverages your size. Small communities can't do this. It allocates the operating costs, we believe, logically and only at a modestly higher level than they are today. We streamline the organizational chart. Right? We would have, again, one organizational chart, right, running this operation, and the model assumes about $150,000 worth of savings because of that streamlining. We generate capital for improvements, so you have a better experience wherever you want that experience. Better dining, better fitness, whatever that may be, helps us attract new buyers. And we believe the market rates, both for our social member and as well as the changes in the golf membership, will help us attract golfers. Right? So we get those things going in that direction. What are the disadvantages of that? Obviously, there's a slightly higher cost for the $75 a month. So we've paid an assessment, $5,000. We respect both of those are significant asks, but they're all part of the system, and we think offset clearly the gains that we get in the model. And I suspect there'll be a challenge to sort of being bold about that. This is a different approach. We've not done it this way in the past, but we think that this this is really a way to go. So finally, as I said earlier, we could modify the operating agreement to achieve a lot of these things. We could just take the $125 and increase it to $200. It would be up to the HOA to do that. We could redistribute our cost as the way we are today, or suggested in the other model. We could make changes in privileges if we think resident social member privileges are undermining golf demand. Could make some adjustments there. And if we, instead of having 3-year agreements, what if we had 10 or 20-year agreements? You actually could do some of that organizational streamlining, right? So, you can achieve a number of the financial aspects of this and have no different effect among the homeowners, increase of $75, and in fact, they don't pay an assessment in this model. We don't get as good in terms of golf because the golf members have to continue to pay this capital fee. So golf membership, by just paying the golf cost, can go down by about $110 a month, but not nearly as effective as the $260. So when we look at the advantages of that, it gives us a number of things. We had a 10-year agreement, for example. There's more certainty there. If costs were divided, we can make some improvements in that regard. We could make some organizational improvements, and we would generate more money, $75 a month from 800 people. That's more money coming into the club, and there would be no assessment as part of that. We'd have a bit of a lower cost, but it's really about control, right? It would be more asked. The community at that point in time would be sending about $2 million a year to the club through the resident social member dues. And it's an organization you don't really control. You're related to, but don't have that control that way. And that's really, I think, what this ultimately boils down to, of 2 boards and, can we stay together and work well that way? We've been doing good at that effect, but is that really sustainable long term? And doesn't really answer the question as to who makes all the decisions. And I think that's really is one of the keys that we said earlier. There's risk in any plan. You want to be driving the bus on that risk and making those decisions yourself at some point in time, or leave those decisions to another party. Also, if we don't have what we would have in the ownership scenario there, if we don't have that initial assessment, we don't have that initial capital to make some significant improvement, right? So we don't have that change happening here. So we don't know necessarily what those improvements are. Certainly we see them around the community and other clubs that are there. We'll be asking you in your surveys again, what would you invest in? What's the most important thing to improve in your mind? Do we want the Oasis? Do we want better fitness? Those sorts of things. And that's what clubs are doing. The clubs that are modernized, the clubs that can raise capital and spend that capital, they're winning. They're getting more business, they're getting more participation, they're getting more members because they're fresh and exciting, and they have great bars and gathering spaces. They have outdoor areas that bring people together and cause socialization. You look at Tamarisk's investment, right, as to really modernizing that dining, casual, indoor, outdoor, first-rate fitness, and things that go along with that. Outdoor dining here at Desert Horizons, it's big, or internally, as I say, we really see this wellness and fitness thing really continuing to grow, and having classrooms and personal training and all of that is a big piece of it. Really a full-on kind of mind-body approach, and even all the way into spa. That's what's happening and will happen in the future. And organizations of the proper size, with the right capital flow, with unified leadership, all of those sorts of things can make those things happen. So next steps, we're going to distribute a written report of everything that's here, distribute the video, we want folks to get involved, right? And so we expect that to happen over the next couple of weeks. So we sit here just about April 1st, right? So I'd say that's out there to you in mid-April. Certainly around June 1st, we ought to have that data. So we'll collect that information, we'll tabulate and analyze that data, and there'll be a published report. So you'll see the kind of feedback that you all gave to the survey. And then, as we said earlier, the mission is for the leadership to sit down with your input, look at these kinds of options and ideas and say, okay, where do we have agreement? Where do we not have agreement? What kind of adjustments do we need to make in order to get something that really is the best benefit for us all here in the community? And we hope to be, back in the fall with answers to those sorts of things, and really at that point in time, kind of a recommendation, if you will, as to how we might want to proceed in the future. So we appreciate your time and commitment to come out, and we certainly look forward to your participation in the process going forward, and answering the surveys, and certainly in our experience, when the community gets involved and is thoughtful and all that, the wisdom resides right here in this room. It resides in this community as to what to do. I think through this exercise, we'll make sure that we have that feedback and that information, and can make some really wise decisions about where we go from here. So thanks for your time and attention. Certainly I'm here to answer questions. Bob and Ann are here, and we'll answer questions. Yes, sir.
Have you seen any instances where social golf has impacted regular golf over this 3-year period? And to what extent? I know it's an easy head shake, but
Okay.
how many social golfers have you had?
I can answer that.
Sure.
That's a good
So the
question.
question, repeat the question, Bob.
The gentleman asked the question, did the benefits given to the social resident members, we gave some, when we did this agreement, we gave some golf access to the social members, and the spirit of that was to get them familiar with the course, get them engaged in the hopes that they would join. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it has to do with price point. They used those privileges, but we didn't get members. But what did happen is some of our older members who were, their play was more limited based on their age, they dropped their membership down to the resident social because they could play 10 rounds of golf or 29-hole rounds for green fees. And so that was not incorporated into the original pro forma. So the total rounds played in the community last year by non-members, social resident, was 660 rounds. To put that in perspective, the total rounds played by members in the first quarter of this year was 3,270. So it's a relatively small percentage of our golf rounds are played by the resident social members.
Other thoughts? Yes, sir, in the back there.
What percentage of golf members are full-time living here, and what percentage would you say are snowbirds?
Ed's here. Ed probably knows that more than anybody.
I don't know the answer to the who are full-time versus snowbirds. We know that 165 of our members live here, and another 65 live outside the city. That's the only way we know.
But the majority of them are seasonal members. I can say that. I know that for a fact.
Seasonal meaning?
Snowbirds.
They're snowbirds. They're here half the year, but they pay dues for the whole year. So they're.
Significant number of members belong to another club somewhere else.
Yes.
I have one other question. If it's out of line or if it doesn't, belong here, please tell me. Okay? I was at a car wash last month, okay, and I was talking to some gentlemen that live next door at Desert Island, and they said they don't have a place to eat anymore, and they would love to come over here to eat. Is that
We'd love them to do that at $345 a month. We'd love them to have that ability at $345 a month. Well, yeah, that's been offered multiple times under multiple generations of boards. A lot of people would like access, but they don't want to pay for it, and we don't make money in food and beverage. So every time we sell something, we lose more money. So, they've got their own problems over there far beyond their dining room problem. They've got as you guys know, the course was purchased by a developer. The members are still owed payment for their equity that was promised. That's supposed to come through this month, supposedly. The hotel plans haven't been developed. It's a community in kind of turmoil, I would say. Certainly not as bad as Rancho Mirage Country Club. But I'll just share with you, I just want to give this example. We have a member of ours in the golf club. His name is John Conti. He's a very active member. He lived at Rancho Mirage. He still owns a home at Rancho Mirage Country Club. And Jeff, if I have some of the stats wrong, I'm sure you'll be help me here. John bought his home there, I think, over 10 years ago, before the club failed. He paid about $608,000 for his house. He has it on the market right now at about $408, no takers, no interest. And he ended up buying another home. And I asked him, "You're a golf member of the Springs. Why wouldn't you buy a house at the Springs?" And he says, "Bob, I don't want that uncertainty. I've dealt with that already once at Rancho Mirage Country Clubs." He chose not to buy here because he did not want to get into this. What happens if the course isn't successful or membership drops? What's that going to do to my home value? I already been down that path one time, but he told me I could share that with the group, that was information he wanted everybody to understand. The other thing I want to just address, I've had a couple of folks come up to me over the last few months. The beauty of, I guess it's the beauty of being the club president, everybody wants to talk to you. And so much sometimes it's hard to have breakfast or lunch or dinner because you spend enough time talking, which I'm fine with. It's fine. But they said, "Bob, hey, golf's dead, man. Why are you guys fighting so hard to keep the course? You know, we can turn it into a park or walking trails or dog park or whatever." And I said, "Well, if golf is dead, why does the Lakes have 445 golf members and we have 224? The Lakes has 445 golf members because it's a better value proposition. And I will also tell you something that is, first of all, I want everybody to know, I'm an equity club member and I'm the club president, but I'm a homeowner in here that invests a lot of money in this house. And I'm passionate about taking the community here, not here. I'm passionate about that. I mean that. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can give to the real estate office, in my opinion, I hope it's shared, is the gift of certainty into the future. You know, wouldn't it be, to be able to sell with confidence and for a buyer to buy with confidence is an amazing gift. And the other thing I will tell you, home buyers are getting a lot smarter, and we're finding that we're getting more people coming over to the club after they've looked at houses with the real estate agents, and they've asked to see the club financial statement. They want to see how the club's doing, and they're asking questions about, let me see your membership curve. Where were you 10 years ago? Where are you today? What are your dues? And some of them are making decisions based on that information. I think Ann and I and the group think that if we can get a bundled community with a reinvestment, we've got a really good product to sell, and we can go here versus here. And I think that's really the question everybody here has to ask themselves. Do you want to go here or do you want to go here? It's really that choice. I'm very excited about it. I think one of the greatest things we can do to sell property around here is to see some steel going on the ground or some renovation happening where people see change and things getting better versus things getting tired and old. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
You made a comment during the presentation on the capital investment.
Yes.
When you said that this was, quote, the initial capital investment.
Mm-hmm.
And you quoted for $5,000 or $4,085,000 as being what was required, but no one has explained exactly what you're going to do. You haven't a budget to do anything. You just want the money first and then decide what you're going to do later.
Well, no, not really. I mean, the idea is as I said, in the survey, we'll be asking what those improvements should be. We don't really know what the highest priority is at this point in time. At that level, we can't do everything, but we can make some, select improvements around that. So, as we say, where the feedback comes in and the group can sit down, then they can start to put some meat on the bones around that. We think we need that number in fairness to the equity golf membership, right? I mean, that's really what's driving that number to begin with. And then secondly, we need that number to make that improvements. And that'll be further defined as we get input as to where you all would like to see that directed. And is that in dining or in other areas there as part of that? So more to come. We're really looking for priorities at this point in time later on to get more specific about where it would go. But it's there for the improvements and it's there for the transfer of assets.
But you're still saying that the initial $5,000 is not based on any factual. It's something that we're going to get to talk about in the forms we're going to get to complete for our own personal opinions. But of course, even then, if the $5,000 becomes the right amount, or $3,000 or $6,000, what happens if the renovations are going to cost a load more and we suddenly get a $10,000 assessment?
Well, that would not be you. If you approved, whatever you approved, it has to be delivered at that cost level. I mean, that's just really what you have to do in any improvement project to do it. So it will be defined as what those improvements are going to be. That will be part of your ultimate package, and you will make a choice around those.
So you will send, in that package, there will be details of what you would think needs improving.
The first package will be to get your opinion of what needs to be improved. We didn't want to spend the time or the energy defining what that improvement is because we don't know what the most important things are to do right now.
Do you think that most of the 817 homeowners in this, in our complex have any idea of what needs to be improved?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's what do you want, right? What do you want for the experience? What do you want to see happen out of the club, right? What are those offerings there? And so, you know, that'll direct us. And there'll be some other things in terms of need, just like you do in any plan. But to say the first out of the gates, again, we're over here, not down there. At this point in time, we're looking for, that money is required in order to have the transfer of the assets, right? If you want to look at it selling the club, call that the price of the club, if you will, right? That then gives us a pool of money which we can invest, and you can direct what those investments are. And the golf members will have to prove willing, we believe they're willing at this point in time, to support that transfer when they see that investment going in place and making a better product here at the club. And so they get the benefit of those improvements too, as part of the, being part of here and using the club. So it'll be defined as to where that should go, what those priorities are, and what would be in the plan, and that will all be ultimately part of the decision making on the other end of the page when that question's asked. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is about the reserve fund, because, and I don't really know what a reserve fund is or how it compares in all the other golf communities, but I know somebody who's a golfer, and the sole reason they chose not to come here wasn't because they weren't great facilities and wasn't a beautiful golf course, it was because of the reserve fund. So that's maybe what Bob was talking about.
Yeah, well, there's,
Know about how that reacts.
That's a fair question. You saw on Frank's slide, I think it was slide 2, we used to get, just a little background, when we were a club, when we were in a 400 member level, we were getting $25,000 to $40,000 a year entrance fees for our memberships. That's before 20 more clubs got built in the valley. Okay, that was back, the Springs Club back in that era was the club. And there's many people in this room that had joined back then that can attribute that. As membership got challenged, we had to reduce those entrance fees. And all the entrance fees go to capital improvements, okay? The reserves. So as membership started to decline, the initiation fees started to decline, I think it was on Jeff, might have been on your watch. We need capital, so we asked our members not only to pay their dues, but pay us $75 more a month that went into the capital fund to fund capital improvements. We got ourselves into a position about 2015-16. I was the treasurer of the club at the time, and I looked at our reserves, and I called 9/11 on our board and said, look, we don't have enough money. And so we made a decision, again, raise our dues another $75. So when someone said to me once, well, the golf members got a $125 break, that was all chewed up in 1 year in a dues increase. So our reserves now are a little healthier. So in this, we're projected right now, if we don't spend any more money in capital improvements between now and the end of the year, we'll have $550,000 in capital reserves. So it's not like we're broke. But the ideal way to account for reserves, and it's just a general formula, and this plan helps accomplish that, is about, if your revenue is $6 million a year, you should be putting around at least $600,000 to $800,000 a year away in capital. We've been putting it's been about 385, 350, so we're not there. This plan does allow us to reinvest on an ongoing basis, and I think that's the most important thing. You want to have a steady flow of capital coming in so you can continue to make progress, and without capital, progress can't be achieved.
Okay, so my other question
Yeah.
is, at some point you said that you based your projections on 50 homes being sold every year.
Right.
I'm just wondering whether that's realistic, sort of going forward. It seems like homes are, like the market was very buoyant this year. I understand that they sold 80 homes this year, and that was like the best since 2008 or something.
Right.
And then, but as the population is younger, like if we get, say, it comes down from an average, and I'll make this up, an
Yeah.
average age of 70 or whatever, and people start buying in at 50 and 60, then we're going to have our homes longer. So it's 50 homes.
Well, we felt that was a fair assumption to use in the formula. We've sold 100 homes in a year. We've sold 40 homes in a year. We just kind of said, okay, what's a reasonable number to use in the formula, the projection? So it could be more, it could be a little less, but probably on average, it's probably pretty good. Yeah, I think we're pretty comfortable with the number. Jeff, you had a question.
I have a question. There
was so much information on that screen, we could not take notes to write down what it was. Is that going to be mailed out to us, or is this?
Multiple ways. Yes, like I say, the video is going to be online. It's actually a split screen where you see all
We
that.
can't watch the screen on the video. It's too small. We need to have that data mailed out to us.
Well, okay, well, just one answer. Actually, the way it's set up, you will be able to read the video on the numbers on the video. That's the way it's being filmed. Secondly, as I said earlier, everyone's going to get the full book of all of this, right? All the information comes to you. And in fact, the survey accompanies it. It's kind of an open book test, right? As you're reading the book, you can answer survey questions and those kinds of things. Yeah, yeah. So that's what it is. So yeah, so it'll be there as
One other
part.
question, I live outside the gate. I don't live outside the gates because I don't want to be here. I want a single-family home and something a little bit larger than what's available in the Springs. I think Mr. Miller and many other of our 65 outside the gates have the same thought. This survey and your presentation comes down to, we want to make sure the HOA members control the club. You've said that many times.
Yes.
We want to control the club, which makes me then think, well, those 65 or so of us outside of the club, you really don't want much from us other than the hope that we continue paying dues. That's just an observation of what you've told me. The other thing is, when I look at the dues structure, and I didn't write it all down, but you showed, we'll say $750 for golf and $200 for a social, and the people who live here who play golf and do both, well, that would be $125 less because you put a credit up on the screen for them.
Not anymore.
The people of,
So question is,
well, it's a question. The screen isn't up there, so I can't say. The people outside of the gate, this is the question. Are we going to pay the same dues as people who live in the project, or are we going to pay a higher figure?
no,
Jeff, I'll answer that. So you'll pay the social dues, then the golf dues. So just like I will, the same number. Right now, I pay a little less than you because I'm a homeowner under the current agreement. I pay $125 less. But you also, as an outside the gate member, will not pay the $5,000 because you're not buying anything. The community would own the club, so you're not. The outside the gate golf members are not going to pay the $5,000 because they don't.
Wouldn't pay $2,500 to join the club, that initiation fee?
That's the inside. I'm not sure I understand the question.
If somebody buys a home and wants to become a golf club member, there was $250.
Right. 7,500 is everybody pays the 7,500. If you want to opt into golf, it's an additional 2,500, 10 all in.
Just hypothetically,
Yeah.
if my neighbor wants to join here, what fee would they pay under this proposal?
That's a good quote. We haven't got that far.
$7,500, that's how I.
Yeah,
that's how I
10.
read it.
10,000. That's right. That's right.
The transfer social fee as well as.
Right, $10,000. But what we're finding in some of the research that we've done is that the entrance fee is less of an issue for people than the monthly dues, and we think the monthly dues coming down can justify a higher entrance fee. Again, the Lakes gets $10,000 just for golf. $8,500 to join as a social, we'd be at $7,500. Then golf is additional 10, and they have 445 members. My hope, Jeff, would be if the golf population grows and we get close to our lid of 300, 325, we can raise the transfer fee for golf to a higher level. You know, because supply and demand now is in check and we can get more money. That would be the goal. But that'd be a nice problem to have to sort out here, a couple of years from now.
the existing outside the golf member is not, actually receives lower cost in the plan and has a entity that's getting capital invested into it. So, I mean, I think
Could you
they're,
explain that a little further? I don't quite understand that.
Well, we showed
I heard
it.
your words, but I didn't quite see that on the screen.
well, the dues go to $735, right? And then it's the $200 for social. So golf becomes $935 per month under the plan.
No capital fees, nothing else.
Right.
Will that be, was that proposed as a one fee for couples, singles, or families? Or
That's the average, right? That's the blended rate.
Yeah, the question was regarding the 735, is that for everybody? It would probably be similar to what we do today, where a single would be a little less, a couple would be a little more, but it wouldn't be a sizable difference in. Yeah, so 3 tiers basically of membership.
So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question about this mandatory joining of the social club for
Right.
You mentioned, I just heard somebody say at the lakes it's $10,000. That to me, as a homeowner, says, okay, you just reduced the value or my sales price by $7,500. Any question. And I'm wondering what the experience has been in other places, because that was one of the discouraging things about Morningstar, was having to pay this huge social membership up front in addition to $1,300 for computers.
Right.
So I wanted to know what the experience is of other clubs.
Well, the experience, yes, you're correct. And those fees typically end up becoming a negotiation within the sale of the property, right? The new member is going to have to pay that fee. Typically, the current owner makes a decision as to whether that's all on them, whether you share that or do anything with it. The math here says that's why sort of the initial assessment's at $5,000 versus that being $7,500. If there has to be some give in that, you've gotten a little bit of that on the front end as part of that. But again, we believe the uptick, the value is there because you're able to express to them, just as Bob's example of the first person who was afraid of the uncertainty, you're selling a property that does have certainty in a community that has certainty anyway as part of that. And again, the amenities have been improved. Ultimately, over the long term, that's the kind of buyer that we're looking to have come in here rather than somebody who's just looking for the cheapest shelter and those sorts of things. So yes, they have to come in and do that, but that's all part and parcel of having a quality experience, having a quality facility, and that sells for that, frankly. We shouldn't be able to, on a property value at this level and for the amenities that could be here, that's not a big ask in that situation, in our opinion. Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your discussion there were some economies of scale through the combination. Did I recall that number correct as 125,000?
We've assumed about 150,000. Somebody said about economies of scale. We're thinking, yes, instead of having, if we have 2 managers and 2 accountants and 2, payroll staffs and maintenance staffs.
125 for the year?
150 a year, 150,000 per year, yes.
Might be more.
I hope so.
Well, we hope so too, but again,
Unless you're not paying your managers anything.
Yeah, we've tried to keep any of those assumptions. We've tried to keep any of those assumptions reasonable. So again, we don't want to overpromise anything. If you can do that, that's great. But we thought that was sort of the minimum that we could get out of that. There were some hands back here. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say thank you very much to Bob and Ann, the 2 boards, and the joint task force, because I know this is a huge amount of work that's gone into it. It's all volunteer hours, and as a member of the community and the club, I'm very, very grateful to all of you for doing that.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm not presently a member of the golf course, but just to help understand how the ownership of the golf course works, are all members of the golf course equity holders and all equity holders members? So is it basically,
Yes, right? Yeah. There's 160.
I'm sorry. We have 224 golf members right now. Out of the 224, I think we have about 165 that are equity members. So they're the voting members. So this proposal will have to be first approved by our equity members before it would even go to the community. So there's 2 steps in the process. Yeah.
what kind of, from a governance perspective, what kind of, to do the sorts of things that this entails or to sell the golf course, is that a 50% plus 1? Is it a 75%?
50% plus 1.
Yes, sir.
You had made mention that the projection for the valley now is the population growth will only be around 5%. Less than the valley had projected. Given that, how will this club compete using the recommended model to combine and recapitalize first with other clubs competing for this same small 5% of buyers? Number 2, given the 1,100 homes coming into Del Webb with their focus on what you're proposing, fitness, wellness, sports, a very different model
Well, I think that, you know, you compete for the idea is to compete, right? That's really I find a lot of clubs get stuck in the mud and don't want to make change or make improvements, feeling that the market's weak or we won't get our share and we'd better to kind of keep things the way they are. The strategy here, as you see it, is one is control uncertainty, to say that we have all of it as members, not Del Webb, not any other corporation or anything else. We're the corporation and we're the shareholders and directors of that. We have a steady stream of capital where we can keep our facilities up and at a high quality level. We're investing capital in improvements that are here. We're at a different price point. Only at the highest level of the Del Webb complex would you get anybody who's at an economic level that you find in the community here. So, you know, they typically go at a little more of a, you know, kind of a middle class sort of positioning as to where they are there. It'll be new and fresh. Clearly it'll be, you know, they have something there, but you're overloaded, well over 1,000 people with access to those facilities rather than the 800. And, you know, again, different plan, you know, overall, no golf available in the community, those sorts of things. So it's really about you being the best you can be, this community being the best it can be, and it's in the model that exists here and operate at a price point. Clearly there'll be a divergence there of who's coming into the marketplace. Those quality buyers, that's why I say even on that entrance fee, you want to be selling your home, you want to be attracting people that see that as a good deal. We shouldn't be able, you know, afraid to ask for the price up at the upper level when we function and deliver on that. When we deliver the programs, we deliver the facilities, that's how we compete and make that happen. I know Ed's looked a lot at the Del Webb program. I don't know what to...
I can help you out. We've looked at Del Webb quite closely on the past memberships here, and we've sent people up there. About 3 levels of houses there, about a $300,000 house, about a $450,000 house, and about a $600,000 house. Those houses are all going to be smaller than the houses here. As you said, there's no golf. There is going to be, I think, a practice simulator or something like that, they told us. They will have golf arrangements with West Mission Hill Resort right next door. So our strategy, and our membership director, John Armando, is working on this now, even as we speak. Our strategy is to pick off those people who would be buying at the highest levels of homes who might be interested in private experience, not across the street. We've already started to contact and have brought in at least one new member who's playing at Weston Mission Hills Resort because he sees what's going to happen there. You're going to have an influx of golfers there. It's crowded already. They have 2 nice courses, nothing compared to what we have. But it's going to be crowded there. You're going to be talking about 5-hour rounds, hard times to get tee times, and that's not a private club experience. So we are actually gathering intelligence on that. The other thing we're gathering intelligence on, if I can take 30 seconds more, is on Desert Island, or ES as they call it. They are offering a membership at all in for $16,000 a year, which is comparable or maybe higher to us, and they're not offering anything near what we're offering golf clubs. In fact, what we do, no secret here, we have somebody here go apply for membership there so they get all the material. So we're aware of what's going on. I can't tell you what they're going to build on the northeast corner because they just announced the sale yesterday of, you know, the 610 acres. But we know what's going on and we're tracking that, and you know, we've got the DI book, and as soon as we find out that that payment isn't made, we will be in touch with every single one of the 72 remaining golf members there. So we're working it. You know, it's a tough market, but we're working it.
Frank's got to leave. He's got to catch a plane, but Ann and I will stay around and answer questions for a few more minutes. Oh. Frank. Okay, wait a sec. You gentleman in the back, with right there in the corner. Okay. Yeah.
I understand what this gentleman said.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, you know, the 10 rounds, you know,
Yeah.
I do get.
Yeah.
After that,
Yeah, but yeah.
care about a guy like me.
Well, no, that's a good question. That's because a number of you have raised that question. But here's what you got to understand. Yes, we care about you. And we value you as a resident social member of our club, and we hope you enjoy the club. But if we're giving golf rounds away on a daily fee basis, what is the motivation for me to pay $1,200 a month to be a member here? I'll just try to play at 95 bucks a round. I'll spend a third of what I spend today. So when you start getting into that semi-private mode, the guys, our membership they'll flock. They'll say, well, we're not going to pay these prices if people are getting access to our course for not paying anywhere close to what we're paying. So it's that fine line. And there's a private and semi-private, that's a different model, and that's not the model we choose to operate. In hindsight, we gave away, in my opinion, too much golf because we got downgrades. We lost, I think, 10 to 15 members who said, wow, I get 29 hole rounds, why do I pay these fees? And they dropped out. That was never the intent of this. The intent of the program, it was designed by Larry Morris, was to give a sampling of the golf to people who maybe have not retired yet, can't spend enough time here to justify the expense. And I was in that boat when I first bought a house here 10 years ago. Give them access, get them to meet some friends, so when the time comes, when they've got more time, they'll join the club. And that was the intent. It was not to say, how do we create more daily fee play? That was never the intent of the, so I care about you, but I also care about the guy that pays $14,000 a year in dues.
I inherited my home.
Yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, my in-laws
Yeah.
passed away. My father-in-law was a golf member here, when you said the old times.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. If I wanted to become a member, is his initiation fee considered, am I like a grandfather?
No, but we'll make you a heck of a good deal if you want to join. We're not getting much for initiation fee, so it won't cost you very much. Step up now before it's too late. I'm serious. I think I want to get her, she asked her hand in her head.
Okay, so now what about the category of the so-called 80% of us that don't play golf?
Right.
And I know someone from the club said, we're not a retirement community, but we kind of are. So, I mean, for those of us who, some people are living on, have you checked out the demographics on how this is going to impact some of the people who've been here for a long time?
That'll come through the survey information, so we'll know that. But I guess the question is, if you're not a golfer, what's in it for me? Well, beautiful green spaces, Ed pointed out, access to dining on campus, breakfast on campus, facilities, tennis, fitness, so home value, pickleball. I mean, there's a lot of value in that, but I understand your question. I guess, and we've talked about this, there is always going to be some people that view any cost increase as prohibitive maybe for them, but we can't make decisions long-term for this entity having that be the first thing we think about. We have to try to do what's right for the community to allow property values to continue to grow and to make this a desirable place for people to want to buy a house. And I remember when I joined here, I bought a house here in 2007, and I wasn't a golf member because I lived in Chicago working full-time, and I walked in these gates, and I was just blown away with the beauty of this place. When you're new to this, it's pretty fantastic. But not much has changed in 10 years, I mean, to be honest with you. And we want to make it better, and that's our.
You just did not address any changes like he was talking about, maybe taking that a step further. So far, you've addressed like the amenities that are already existing.
Right.
So I guess those of us that don't play golf, we are an audience. We do pay dues. I see on the chart, I see the golf actually dues coming down a little bit, but ours going up to accommodate.
That's right.
So I think we have a right to ask for something.
I thought I answered the question. I'm sorry that you didn't think I did. I'm sorry.
Maybe one answer is none of the $5,000 that we're looking at to recapitalize is going to the golf course.
Yeah.
It will be going to either improving this building, improving
Tennis center.
spaces, whether it be a new spa, fitness center. Now, it might not cover all of it, but
Yeah.
it's not intended to go into the golf.
Yeah.
It's intended to provide a better social living experience for all of us who are homeowners.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Thanks, Ed. Gentleman in the back. I'll get you.
Difference in the club being about $450,000.
Right.
I'm just curious, with the advent of all the other members using the facilities for the dining, all that stuff, whether, what has that done to the club in terms of increasing
Yeah, I can speak to that. We got a bit of a bump from in the revenue lines of both the Oasis and the dining room, but unfortunately, the way clubs operate, the food service is a benefit of being a member. We lose money. Every meal we sell, we lose money. So more volume doesn't equate to more profit, so to speak. So that hasn't necessarily helped. But what we've really noticed, and I think everybody can see this, the club and our comptroller, Neil Hoffman, worked here 10 years ago before this whole program was set up. And he's the guy that runs our financials for us. He said, this place is so busy, why doesn't our financial statement look better? Because there's so much activity. The place is full of card players and activity and cars, and it just doesn't translate. So there's a lot more activity, but we haven't been able to monetize it. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's been helpful. But I think engagement is more of what it's done. It's brought more people together. I see a lot more people in all the dining rooms, and the Oasis is packed to the point where we've looked at expanding the Oasis. That's $400,000 to expand the Oasis. That's not easy to do. And right now, the way we're currently structured, the golf members are the only ones that pay for that. And so that's where it gets difficult to do all the things we need to do on the backs of 224 people. Yes, ma'am. And Jeff, I'll get to you.
Just that came to mind when this lady raised point.
Yeah.
Has there been any consideration given to going back? My understanding was, and I might have the number wrong, but people have social membership. Like we were golf members who have access to all facilities, but then there was also the social membership where people who play tennis
Right.
and have social privilege, and they paid like $375.
Yeah, that's right. $345 plus capital charge.
And so is there not, would there be any option for the people who are using all these facilities to pay a little bit more than, and I don't know what you're using the facilities, but for yourself, so they pay $100 a month, and these people who are actually taking, using the facilities a lot.
Yeah.
Golf and tennis and all that, they're now paying free.
It's really hard. That'd be like the fitness center saying, okay, only people pay for the fitness center, the people that use the fitness center. The whole community pays for the fitness center and the HOA dues. That's kind of that same model that we're using. Very hard to say, well, you should pay $300, you should pay $225, you're $175. That was a very difficult model to try to figure out. We talked about that, but the recommendation, and Frank, this is what he does for a living with clubs and communities, pick a number, go with a number. And for some people, it's a better deal than it is for others, but it's the number. Jeff, you had a question.
I have just one question.
Yeah.
Frank dismissed the sale of the club as not a practical approach. He also dismissed having an outside management group come in.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little
Sure.
feedback of how that was determined?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, the question was from Jeff Beaumont, former club president and long-term member. Why didn't we not take the sale of the club or hire a club corp, if you will, to run the entity? Well, when you technically do that, they don't buy it from you. They take it and they take the risk, but they also own the land. It's their property. And you lose complete control. So you've got the club in the hands of someone else. Frank said the only club company based on our size and the fact that it's Coachella Valley, that finding a club company that would take this off your hands would be very difficult. And he said the people that would be interested in it would be property developers, not golf companies. And I don't think any of us in the community want that option. I certainly don't. I can go join any club I want. I don't have to be a member here, but I live here. Yes, Michael?
Well, we lived in Monterey Country Club before we moved to
Yeah.
Springs. And there when we
They're Club Corp.
we got hit with $6,000 and we weren't even allowed to walk into the clubhouse. Go figure that out.
Yeah.
My question
Yeah.
is going back to the people who would purchase a property here, and they would be hit with the $7,500 extra.
Right.
Plus $2,500 more to be a member of the club.
No. Let me just back one more time. No, I understand. That's why we're going to send you all this stuff, Mike. There's so many numbers here, and I get it. You buy, you come into the Springs, you find a home you want to buy, and you make a deal. Part of the deal is you pay a $7,500 fee that goes to the, quote, entity, which is this, okay? If you want golf, if you say, hey, look, I'm a golfer too, we layer on another $2,500, so it's $10,000. and now you're a golf member at more reasonably priced due structure. That's how it works.
Okay, so that's how it works for some of the buyers in your property.
Right.
What about all the people here that might not be members of the golf club? What does it take for us to then pay a monthly fee to play golf on the course? If we're,
You'd have to join the club.
we have to join the club.
Yeah. I mean,
So how much is it to join the
well, right now it's, I think, $4,000 in our current model.
But the new homeowner's getting for $2,500?
Well, but they're also paying $7,500. It's part of it's a package. They're paying $10,000. They're not really paying $75,000. If they want golf, it's $10K. So, anybody?
The percentage of full-time to part-time residents?
Yeah, that was touched on a little bit earlier. I want to say, and we have that in our, Ed, I think you have some stat,
About somewhere between 25 to 33% full-time versus
12 months a year. There's a lot of people that go away for a couple months, but it's a pretty seasonable market.
They list this as their permanent residence.
Go ahead,
They
Dan.
travel. Kelly, do you have those numbers?
It's closer to about 38% to 40% now. It's slowly changing.
Oh, question was, what's the percentage of full-time residents in the community versus part? Kind of a follow-up on your question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned, and many people have mentioned over the past few weeks, months, that the club does not make money on any of its dining establishments, whether it's the Oasis. Why, as president of the board, hasn't the board looked at running this as a restaurant and not as an operation losing money?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll tell you this. The country club model is not like a for-profit model. There's a high expectation of service. They want their drinks fast, they want their meal fast, and everybody comes in a 2-hour window. And it's part of what you pay your dues for. You're paying your dues to have a good experience. And we could take it to zero. And every new board member that comes onto our board, the first thing they do is they go at the food and beverage line and say, if we could just get that to zero, we'd be so much better off. It's labor. You can have fewer people. It's not food, it's people. And 77% of our revenue, or of our dining revenue, is labor. So it's a high service model, and Jeff, you know more about this than I. You did this many years, but it's just hard. You can't give the country club experience if you try to run it as a for-profit exam. We make a little bit of money at the Oasis, tight menu, small staff, food that's more it's more inexpensive to prepare. That works. We're not zero there. We're a little bit positive. But here, it's about $358,000 a year of our dues go to support the dining operation. Okay, let me explain. That's true. But we raised everybody's hourly rate. The whole minimum wage thing had a real big impact. It's going to have a big impact for the next few years because it's going up like $1 a year. The club made the decision to put everybody on all the waiters and waiters on an hourly rate. We upped their hourly rate to match what they made with their tips and their minimum wage. But it takes us out of there every year. It's going to go up another 7-8%. It got us to a level we could be sustainable. And so the service charge pays for the additional hourly that goes to the waiters. And that's pretty common in the club. And actually, restaurants now, it's happening around the country. New York, LA are starting to do this because the whole minimum wage thing is getting crazy. Yeah.
The point I have about that
Yeah.
is that probably 75% of people who eat in the dining room do not know that the service charge goes to the house and not to the waiter. And so it should be listed as a house charge or not service charge.
But it goes to the waiter. It goes to in the form of a higher hourly rate. We didn't really save any money doing it. It was more of just, yeah.
I'm just saying that when I sat down and signed a check, and we gave a check for $300,
Yeah, yeah,
$45 service
yeah.
charge, we think that's going to our waiter.
Yeah.
$45 is not going to my waiter for that service. He's getting an hourly wage based upon what you think the projection of the tips are.
Right, that's correct. But it's based on a historical formula of how much you made the prior year work, same amount. It was all done to an hourly rate. The goal was not to make people earn less. It was to take the risk away from the constant minimum. Because here's what happens. Otherwise, you got to raise prices again. It just means you got to charge more. Otherwise we lose more money, and that it kind of counters what you said. Why are we not doing better? Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Folks, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for being engaged and involved. Thank you.